Hi my loves, welcome back to my channel. Welcome if you guys are new. I feel like universally this is our favorite time of the year as readers because it means we get to wrap up and talk about our best reads of 2025. Obviously I read a lot of fantasy and I find it really hard to pick my favorite fantasy of the year because in my eyes there are a lot of different kind of fantasies. So I feel like the best way for me to talk about my favorite fantasy books of the year is to divide them into categories, and today we are going to be going through my fantasy awards of 2025. I did this over on TikTok last year and I just feel like it's a really fun way to chat about some of my favorite fantasy reads this year. Give you guys my best recommendations, kind of just wrap up my fantasy reading year. I just don't think in my mind you can compare like a high political fantasy to a really fun romantasy that you're reading to get like butterflies and giggle over. Like they're two different feelings. They're two different 5 stars in my mind. So I find it best to go through categories and nominate my favorite for each category. I've written it up in my reading journal here, very simple, but we're going to be going through all the different categories. By the way, we have a little bit of a different background today. I thought it was just a little bit festive. Like we have the little Christmas tree, we've got our little gnome and everything like that. Like I think it's just a little bit festive. Categories that we are going to be going through today. We have best new author, best magical world, best standalone, best dystopian, best YA series, best, you're gonna get sick of the word best, best adult series, best romance subplot, the biggest surprise in a fantasy book, my best romantasy, which is different to a romance subplot, and the best academic setting. So we've got some really great reads that match all of these, and I'm so excited to talk to you about them. So without further ado, let's get into it. In 2025, I really did branch outside my comfort zone, and that meant reading a lot of new authors to me, which I'm really, really glad that I did. I wanted to explore some new types of fantasy, but also just different writing styles, different authors. And this one blew it out of the park for me. This was such an easy award for me to give. And the best new author I have for 2025 is James Islington. He wrote Will of the Many. This is the only series I've read by him so far. I read the first 2 in this series. And to me, this was absolutely perfect. First of all, James Islington has somehow convinced me to love first person present tense. I famously do not like first person present tense. I know that a lot of people love it and it's their favorite way to read like a fantasy book, but for me, I'm a third person past tense kind of person. So when this was first person present tense, I was like, oh, I'm not gonna like it. No. I absolutely love this writing style. The writing style in particular was just so immersive and it was so easy to read, yet so much was happening. It was quite crazy. Like this is quite a complicated plot. It's a complicated magic system, complicated world, and everything is so fast paced. There is such high action in this book. You'd think it would be really hard to follow and really easy to just get like completely distracted and not know what's going on in this book. Not at all. I was hooked from page 1. I could not put this down. Even when I wasn't understanding everything completely, I wanted to be understanding it. So I was so addicted to it that I kept reading it to understand it. That doesn't happen to me. If I am not understanding a book and not enjoying it, I will just zone out and I will be reading the words and they won't be like actually cementing into my brain. I definitely want to dive into more of his works in the future. I know he has another high fantasy series, The Will of the Many. If you're unsure, I'll give you a quick synopsis. We are set in this world with a hierarchy system based on will. So will is like mental and physical strength, and the more will you have, the higher on the pyramid you sit and the higher in society as a result. So we are following Viz, who gets adopted into a pretty high ranked family, and they want to train up Viz to attend the academy so he can kind of go undercover into the academy to help get them answers for this unsolved mystery they have. It really develops so much from there, but this is one of the most incredible worlds I have read. I feel like this almost borders on sci-fi as well, and I feel like this is what prompted my sci-fi journey because I was like, if I like this, I may like some more sci-fi stuff. But yeah, James Islington so easily wins this award. I think he is a great writer and I can't wait to read more of him. He's also, I think, from Melbourne, Australia, where I live. So that's really cool. All right, the next category is the best magical world. Now in my mind, this is like the most unique, extraordinary magic world that really caught me off guard, and I just was fully immersed in it and loved the actual like science, if you will, to the magic. I loved the actual magic system. This was actually quite a hard category for me because I've been introduced to some incredible magic systems this year, but I thought for this prompt, what deserved it was Night and the Moth by Rachel Gillig. I read this at the start of the year and honestly haven't stopped thinking about it since. Rachel Gillig, I feel like, is known for her really whimsical, unique magic systems. Shepherd King duology was based off tarot cards. Different tarot cards give you a different magical ability, and this one is based off divination. So like the study of dreams, How cool is that? I feel like she gets these really spiritual, mystical kind of practices and then puts them in a magical fantasy setting, and it works so well. I already knew that I loved Rachel Gillig, and so this was a very anticipated release for me, and it just solidified my love for her, honestly. So in The Night and the Moth, we are following Sybil. Okay, first of all though, for all my Harry Potter fans, I found that really funny that she's a diviner slash like works with divination, and Sybil was the divination teacher in Harry Potter. I just found that really funny. But we are following Sybil, and she is a diviner, which basically means in her dreams, she receives visions from 6 of the unearthly figures known as omens. And these are kind of almost like prophecies for the future, dark prophecies. So people will come to visit her to learn about their future, learn if they have anything tragic within their future, within their foreseeable future. That whole premise in itself is amazing, and just the magical world around this was absolutely incredible. I loved every single second of it. I could not get enough of it. Cannot wait for the second book in this series as well. We did get an announcement for that this year, which is really exciting. If you love like whimsical, mystical, moody worlds, I feel like you'll absolutely love this. It was just such a standout for me in the magic system. Like, I liked the romance, I liked the storyline, of course. The magic system in the world is what really made it stand out from the crowd. Our next category is the best standalone fantasy. Now, I am quite new to standalone fantasies. I am like a series girl through and through. I love a good fantasy series. Now and then though, I do want a just standalone fantasy. So I'm starting to like branch out a little bit more to read a little bit more of them. They're honestly quite hard to find, like a good standalone fantasy, but this book absolutely astounded me. This was a 5-star read. It was one of those reads that sticks with you for like hours upon weeks upon months after reading it. I just thought the characters were incredible, the prose was incredible, the world, it just has such an impact on you. It's a very impactful book. And if you haven't guessed it already, that is none other than Blood Over Bright Haven by M.L. Wang. This was one of the most crazy books I have read. As I said, standalone fantasy. We are following our main protagonist. I don't know how to pronounce her name, but Siona, shall we say, has been studying magic for about 20 years now, and she becomes the first female to be accepted into, what is it called? The University of Magics and Industry. Once she gets accepted into there obviously is like this whole array of challenges that she faces as just being the first woman in this industry. But she also starts to realize the kind of dark, corrupt secrets that go on behind the scenes. Along her journey through this like university though, she meets some really important characters, and just the bonds in this are absolutely incredible, but also the common theme of female rage. Wonderful. Some of the best female rage I have ever read in a fantasy book. We also have this thing called a spell graph, and that is how they basically produce magic, which I think is really cool. Again, a very unique twist to magic. This was just such a crazy, high stakes, intense read, and I feel like it starts out quite simple and you're just following our protagonist, and slowly things just start to escalate and escalate until it gets to a point that you're just like, how is this going to be concluded? If there is one fantasy book that I think everyone should read, it is Blood Over Bright Haven. It is quite intense. We do have some intense themes, but I just think it is one of those books that I would recommend every single person reading because it was that incredible. Like, it just stuck with me for such a long time. It still has stuck with me. I definitely want to read more by M.L. Wang in the future as well. I really wanted to read Sword of Kaigan. I've heard incredible things about that one as well. What a standalone. Halfway through this, I was like, there is no way that this is getting wrapped up. Like, this definitely has to be a series, but no. It was perfect. Next is best dystopian book. Now, I didn't read too many dystopian books this year. I think all of them that I did read were YA dystopian though. And the one that like I feel really bad because there was absolutely no competition against this read, probably one of my best reads of the entire year, and that is of course Sunrise on the Reaping. This won by an absolute mile. Like, nothing could have compared to it. Of course, I'm sure you all know Sunrise on the Reaping is a prequel to The Hunger Games following Haymitch's games. This just tore my heart to shreds. I have never ever been so emotional whilst reading a book before, I don't think. Like, I was bawling my eyes out. I feel like because I have such a strong connection to this series as a whole, like there is so much history to this series. It was like my first dystopian series. It was one of my first real true loves of a series. It really escalated my reading journey, and I think having those emotional ties to it definitely impacted my experience of reading Sunrise on the Reaping, and I just didn't expect to be getting another book in the Hunger Games, to be honest. That was not on my bingo card. So it was the best surprise ever, literally the best surprise ever, and I am so happy that it happened. Absolutely incredible. Yeah, can we really argue with that one? I feel like I don't need to explain myself much on that. Next category is best YA series. Okay, I have two for this one because I couldn't really choose one. Well, I have a winner and then I have a runner-up because I needed to give an honorable mention to it because these were both incredible series. I'd actually read both of the first books in this series last year, at the very end of last year, but I continued my journey and finished one of them. About to finish the other one. They are so incredible, and they are. Honestly, they both have very similar vibes. vibes. But the winner, The City of Brass, this is the Daevabad trilogy. I feel like I've definitely been talking about this trilogy a lot recently because I just finished it. The second book, especially in this series, was one of the best books I have ever read. I thought it was one of the best second books I have ever read. So easy for a trilogy to give second book syndrome. It is so easy for that to happen. And this just absolutely did not. It was crazy. In The City of Brass, we are following Nari. She has grown up on the streets of Cairo basically as a kind of thief, doing tricks and stuff just to kind of make a living. One day she accidentally summons this very ancient, powerful being, and that really just changes the trajectory of her journey. The magic system in this was beautiful. It was very much inspired by Egyptian and Middle Eastern culture, and I thought that was really, really unique. Also, the mythical creatures throughout this series were wonderful. I am just such a sucker for a mythical creature, so anytime we have a unique kind of magic system with mythical creatures, I'm going to love it. But not only was like the whole setting of this incredible, the plot was so unique. It was so refreshing. It didn't feel like the same kind of fantasy plot that you've read a million times. It felt so refreshing. And the writing was so easy to read, and honestly it was quite a like high stakes book. Like there was a lot going on a lot of the time. Even if we were in kind of more like simple situations, there was still a lot going on in the background that you were thinking about constantly. As I said, the writing was so addictive. I think that's the main thing that got me. The writing was incredibly addictive. I could not put it down. I just think this is so incredibly underhyped. It is an older series. This was first published in 2017, so it just kind of has those nostalgic fantasy vibes, and as I said, a very refreshing take on fantasy. There is a tiny subplot of romance in here that you do like definitely swoon over, even though it's a tiny subplot. But I love that. Like I love when the subplots aren't the focus of the story, which is like the point, I guess, of a subplot. Seriously need more people to read this. The runner-up to this series, I feel like, again, no surprises here, Ember in the Ashes Quartet. I am reading the fourth book at the moment and it is absolutely giving. I am so excited to be finishing this series, so nervous as well. And I love our characters so much that I don't really want to let them go. But this is a very similar feel to The City of Brass, which is interesting that I read them like kind of in the close proximity of each other, and I loved them both so much. In Ember in the Ashes, we are following Leia. She is a scholar who has lost both of her parents, a lot of her family. The only living family she has left that she knows of is her brother. And one day he gets arrested for aligning with the rebels against the Martial Empire, which is like the hierarchy of this world. To try and get him back, she decides to go undercover as a slave into this empire, to try and save him. We are also following Elias. He is a soldier at the academy within the Martial Empire. He's undergoing a quest of his own. He's basically has to like participate in this contest to be the next Martial Emperor. We have a lot going on. Their paths collide. Obviously it goes from there, but this series is just so well thought out. The second book in this series was incredible to me. I loved getting a deeper feel of our magic system in the second book. And honestly, the plot twists in this were crazy. Also in the last book as well, these two both had that in common. They both had these crazy plot twists, character arcs, character development, but also just like plot twists that you would just never have seen coming that just like sent the whole plot in a different direction. And I don't know how this series is going to end, but I'm so excited about it. But yeah, these two are both incredible, and I think they both deserve a lot more hype than they get, if I'm going to be honest. I think the only reason City of Brass is a little bit higher is purely because of the rich magic that it holds. The cultural mythologies, the animals, everything like that. It just had a really, really great balance of that, I thought. And I just kind of want a little bit more magic. We're definitely getting a lot now in the later books, but probably could have had a little bit more earlier on, and that would have captured me a tiny bit more. But still, they're both incredible. Like, there's not a lot to fold. The next category is Best Adult Fantasy Series that I read this year. This could have been a romantasy series. It could have been anything really. A high fantasy series. The winner is actually high fantasy though. And again, I feel like this is pretty obvious. No competition here. But the one that got my vote for this year was Brandon Sanderson's Way of Kings. I have read the first two books in this series. It feels like a lot more because they're so thick, so big. Feels like I've spent a lot more time in this world than only two books. But this is the first book in the Stormlight archive. I am definitely going to be continuing my Stormlight journey throughout the next year. Very excited, very nervous, but very excited. But this just introduced me to a whole new world I was so excited to explore. In the Way of Kings, we have three different perspectives. We are following Kaladin, who is a soldier, used to be this very elite soldier, but he has become a slave. And so he's living like literally in the pits and just trying to survive, trying to get through. We are following Shallan, who is an aspiring academic. And we are following Dalinar, who is the brother of the past king. The world slash like empire we are set in has been at war for years and years and years now, and it is kind of getting to a point where they're either going to win or they're going to lose. Like it's really getting to that tipping point. So we're kind of just following these characters as they navigate their way through lives, through war politics, through politics in general, also discovering this whole new magic system. And the magic system is basically based off light, obviously, and kind of like gravity, I would say. So some very rare people, some very magical people can change their center of gravity. So you could be walking on the wall and that would be your center of gravity. It's very fascinating, very fun. We also have like these swords that contain stormlight that are really, really powerful. I just absolutely loved this. I cannot wait to continue this series more. As you can see by the tabs, like I was obsessed with it. Such a long book, but not one page was I bored. It is insane. And the second book was like one of my best reads of the year. 5 stars so easily, 6 stars if I could. These characters are so near and dear to my heart already, and I am only 2 books in. But yeah, Way of Kings easily wins best adult series of 2025 that I started reading. Next category is best fantasy with a subplot of romance. This is like my perfect kind of fantasy. I love a subplot of romance. I don't love when the romance is like the main focus. When it's a romancy, I don't mind a romancy. Like I love a good romancy, but I have to be in the mood for it, if you know what I mean. I am all for the small interactions, the chemistry built over like a year or something. Like there's just these tiny little interactions, you know, touching of a hand, sending butterflies, everything like that. I love that. I love that more than anything. The book that gave me like the most butterflies from the subplot of romance, and it was a subplot, I would say, is Wild Reverence by Rebecca Ross. I do want to give a little shout out to Addie LaRue. I just have a really hard time like categorizing Addie LaRue, The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. Like, is it a fantasy? Is it a fantasy romance? Is it, I guess it's magical realism. So I don't really know what category that falls into, but that was incredible as well. I just decided to pick Wild Reverence because it's definitely more fantasy-esque. So Wild Reverence is actually a prequel to the Divine Rivals duology. You may know the Divine Rivals duology. It is one of my favorite duologies I've ever read, a YA historical fantasy, I would say. It's kind of like a historical fiction / love story with fantastical elements. This was much more of a fantasy. We are following the gods of the world. So I would say this is like a prequel to Divine Rivals. I wouldn't say you necessarily have to read Divine Rivals before you read this, but I do think it's worth it. I'm going to get the names up because I'm starting to forget some of the names while I'm talking about all these different characters. But we are following Matilda, and she is kind of this very blessed god because she can travel between the 2 different worlds of the gods. She can go to the underworld and she can also visit the sky gods. She becomes like this messenger between the 2 worlds, essentially. Matilda also constantly has dreams of this mortal boy. She doesn't know why. She just constantly has dreams of him. We are also following Vincent, who one day wrote to Matilda with like a prayer, and that went unanswered. It's like a hope, like just please help me, basically. This was just incredible. I love Rebecca Ross. I think she writes in the most incredibly whimsical, beautiful way. I could not get enough of this story. I just thought this was one of the most tragic, beautiful, incredible love stories that made me feel so, so much. Honestly, can't recommend this enough. I loved every single second of it, and I think you will too. Best subplot of romance goes to this. To be fair, I kind of did read this for the romance. When I look back at it, what I remember most of and what made me feel the most, the plot was great as well, don't get me wrong, but the romance really took it away for me. I fear I have forgotten our next category. What is it? Okay, biggest surprise, the book that surprised me the most. This is a pretty easy one for me. As I said, I started my sci-fi journey this year, so we're going to include sci-fi in this category because I only read 1 or 2. The biggest surprise to me was Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. If you had told me that a sci-fi book, a very intense, heavy sci-fi book, was going to make my top reads of the year, I would never have believed you. But this was incredible. The reason I say it's like quite a heavy sci-fi book is because I've read sci-fis before, but they very much feel like fantasy with sci-fi elements, if that makes sense. Whereas this was literally following an astronaut in space. I'm not going to tell you anymore because I went in with that premise that a man wakes up in space as an astronaut and he doesn't remember how he got there. That's all I went in knowing, and I want you to do the same. This was incredible. First of all, the writing was so humorous. Honestly, this is another author I would say I was really happy to be introduced to in 2025 because I definitely want to read more by him. He also wrote The Martian, which is one of my favorite movies, at least favorite sci-fi movies. But honestly, this was one of the most hilarious books I have ever read. The main protagonist being inside their head is hilarious. There were definitely some sciencey moments that I didn't quite catch straight away. I was trying to draw on like my year 12 chemistry and figure out what was going on. So it definitely took a moment to understand what was going on. But it was done in a way that, yes, if you're a science kind of person, if you know what's going on, you'll be able to understand when they're talking about all these very sciencey terms. But if you're like me and you don't really understand that, then they explain it. So it was definitely done in a really clever way way that makes anyone able to enjoy this book. And this is the kind of book that I think anyone would enjoy. Even if you have never picked up a book before, I think you'd enjoy this book. I've also heard that the audiobook is incredibly good. I didn't have Audible or anything when I was reading this. I just read it physically, but a lot of people have said that the audiobook is like, I do want to listen to it one day. I'll do a reread and listen to it. This is also soon going to be a movie starring Ryan Gosling, and having his voice in my head as the main protagonist worked so well. That comedic kind of relief that Ryan Gosling gives to his characters was what our main protagonist had. It was such a unique kind of quality, and it matches him so well. He's so perfectly cast for this. So I cannot wait to see the movie when it comes out. I've seen the trailer. Don't watch the trailer before you read this. I was given that tip and I'm very glad I was. Watch it as like a reward after you finish the book. But from what I can see in the trailer, it does look like it's going to be a really good movie adaptation. So I'm very excited about this. But yeah, this was my biggest surprise. I would never have thought that this would have made my fantasy awards. The next category is, one second, best romantasy. So this is one that very much focuses on the romance over the fantasy elements. Like, it's a really fine line, guys. It really just depends, I think, on personal preference, like, or just personal opinion, whether a book is a romantasy or a fantasy. When I was going through the Goodreads Choice Awards in one of my last videos, I was saying how, like, what constitutes a fantasy romance to a romantasy. Like, to me, they're very different things, because a fantasy romance has a subplot of romance. A romantasy is like very romance heavy. But my best romantasy, this one is actually quite surprising to me. It was also nominated for Goodreads Choice Awards, and I think that's Enchantra, purely because I had so much fun in this book. Truly could not put this book down. I was giggling, I was kicking my feet. I felt like I was young reading a romance book for the first time. Like, the chemistry between our characters was so good. I feel like it just had everything you look for in a romantasy book. It was so addictive. It was so fun. This is the second book to Phantasma. I would say they're like dark fantasy romances. They are a bit spicy, but they're not like dark romances, if that makes sense. It's like dark fantasy. It's a very moody, gothic kind of fantasy world. But yeah, I just thought the chemistry between our main two protagonists was great. We are following the sister from Phantasma, and she basically goes to the underworld and has to kind of compete in these games, like these trials. So we have that element as well, that trope. Really, really fun. Definitely made the stakes a lot higher, gave it this sense of tension that you couldn't escape. Yeah, I think that was one of the best romantasies I read this year, and I didn't really expect that, but I feel like it was just a really fun read. Again, it didn't follow the same kind of fantasy plot or fantasy romance plot that I'm used to, and that's always a big tick from me. The last category on this list is the best academic setting in a fantasy book, or best fantasy academia, I guess you would say. I don't know. But I just feel like this is a really, really prominent theme in a lot of the books I read this year, was like an academy setting of some kind or an academic setting of some kind. This was a really tough one to choose, but by the end I was like, you know, this book has to win, and that is The Raven Scholar. I discovered this book in like, I think June or something of this year, and I was totally obsessed. This has a trials aspect. It has like this whole academy kind of aspect, and look, it definitely is very slim fitting into this category, but I made up this category for the awards, so we're just gonna go with it, okay? In this world, every 24 years there is a trials contest held for the next emperor. Whoever wins this trial is the next emperor. In this world as well, there are kind of different, almost like communities, houses, categories defined by different sacred animals. So we have, let me list them all. We have fox, the raven, the tiger, the ox, the bear, the monkey, and the hound. One from each kind of category competes in these trials, but then one of them is murdered. So there's like this mystery aspect as well, and our main protagonist tries to figure out why that happened. I just really, really enjoyed this. We also have like this sassy sidekick kind of situation, which I really enjoyed as well. You know me, guys, you know me. I love mythical animals. I love any kind of sassy animal sidekick. Honestly, a really refreshing fantasy, and I feel like every trope that it embodied, whether that was trials, whether that was like an academy setting, a very loose academy setting, I just thought it was really, really great. I highly recommend this book. I think it is incredibly underrated. Honestly, a lot of these in the list are very underrated in my opinion, and I think you need to read it. But yeah, those are my fantasy awards of 2025. I hope you guys got some good recommendations from this. We only have 2 more videos left, guys, for Bookmas, which is absolutely crazy, but I hope you've been enjoying it thus far. It's been a journey and a half, and I've been loving it. I love Bookmas every single year, so I can't wait to do it again next year as well. I hope you guys are having a wonderful holiday season. Thank you so much, so much for watching to the end of this video, and if you've been watching all my Bookmas videos so far, please let me know. That truly means so much to me. Like, I cannot understand that so many of you guys want to watch me 12 days in a row. Like, that is crazy to me. So thank you so much for being here. I love chatting to you guys about books and taking you along on my reading journeys and everything like that. So yeah, a big hug through the screen to you guys. Yeah, thank you for watching to the end of this video. If you've stayed till here, I love you all so much, and I will see you in my next video.